We are talking today, after the aftermath, about the true massacre that occurred in the United States. The Chinese launched DeepSeek, a free, open-source, artificial intelligence, and it crashed the stock prices of the high-tech sector in the United States. Well, that being said, we need to start reflecting on what comes next. First of all, some Americans are already becoming aware that the country has lost the supposed monopoly on innovation. People thought it was the homeland of innovation with Silicon Valley, etc. China has shown that things are not quite like that. So what happens? From now on, Americans will have to rethink everything.
Daqui para frente, os americanos vão ter que repensar tudo. Por quê? Porque o problema todo.
Why? Because the whole problem is that in these years, since World War II, the United States has never had a serious commercial competitor. Japan attempted this, but it was a much smaller economy than the American one, very dependent on the United States. Paul Volcker resolved this with American interest rates, and Japan never recovered. China is a completely different case. I always say that China is not Japan. China is not a Soviet Union 2.0. It's a country with 45 centuries of history. The United States has 3, China has 45. So it's much more complicated. It's something much deeper, much more comprehensive, much more solid. So, for example, what was the trump card that the United States had in hand? Look, we have NVIDIA, which is the major producer of semiconductors. We restrict the export of these semiconductors to China, and the Chinese will fall behind in the matter of artificial intelligence, which is the foundation of everything nowadays. However, China has already shown that it doesn't depend on that. It can develop artificial intelligence at a much more affordable cost than the United States. Now, there are some things that go beyond that, because, for instance, China will not remain idle, depending on the goodwill of energy exports. She will develop her own methods for semiconductor construction, will make them as good as or better than the Americans on a very large scale, and will drive down the price. I mean, the future of NVIDIA is not very good. The United States will eventually have to realize, sooner or later, that there is no way to compete with China. Either they establish they will end up on the losing side. The American economy, as it is, and the Chinese love the American model of financialization. They love it because they know it is no match to compete with China. The American model is financialized. So what happens? It has two problems. First, it inflates the price of things, which makes them uncompetitive. Second, he invests very little in infrastructure. He invests very little because all that money is used for shareholder remuneration and other things I've already mentioned here, various government corruptions, etc. China knows this. So it knows that its production model is better than the American one. That's why they never fought to export their ideology. China doesn't care about exporting, because they know that if they export their manufacturing and commercial ideology, they will have serious competitors, so they prefer to let it be. Americans think they are doing well with their ideas, with their worldview. Let them be. The Chinese realize that the American is not a competitor.
O chinês percebe que o americano não é concorrente. Bom, aí eu tô olhando as nossas anotações aqui porque
So, I'm reading our notes here because before going live, folks, one of our videos takes hours of preparation. So let me add some other things for you. The basic strategy of the Chinese, which they've already shown with DeepSeek, is to hit the tech companies where the United States makes money. NVIDIA is the main one, but it's not just NVIDIA. Will American companies recover their value? Well, they might recover, but no one is very optimistic about that. But the fear of the Americans is this. If the Chinese did this, they could do other things. They have other cards. And you see, this Chinese move is not new.
O que acontece? Essa jogada chinesa, ela não é nova. A China quase quebrou o Reino Unido no século.
In the 19th century, China almost bankrupted the United Kingdom. Chinese manufacturing production was so large that all the silver the UK was stealing from the Spaniards had to be sent to China. They only managed to break China because they introduced drugs there. This time, I think that won't work very well. Let me tell you about an incident that happened in China in 2006. Rolling Stone magazine started being published in China. The Rolling Stone we have in Brazil is a very good magazine, by the way. I buy it occasionally. But what happened? They started with pace gear. They went to do the biography of a Chinese rocker who composed the anthem of Tiananmen Square. The Chinese government didn't like it at all and revoked Rolling Stone's license, which lasted a month. So thinking they can overthrow China through subversion, I think it's better to change tactics. That won't work. And the lesson they learned with the American technology sector applies to other sectors as well. China has a much larger naval production than the American Navy. That's the truth. And they are putting more and more ships in the sea. There will come a time when the American Navy, we're very close to that, will realize there's no way out. Now, if you really look closely, the American mistakes, what's messing with the United States, are the American mistakes themselves. They have an economy that heavily exploits other countries. It's not a cooperative economy, and American products end up being more expensive. In the case of the shipbuilding industry, I always say that out of greed, they removed subsidies from the shipyards, and it resulted in what it did. Now you no longer have the means to move things forward. That's the world we have today. China, as Minister Aldo Ribeiro said, never announces what it will do. It never warns. This was the case in the Korean War in 1950. MacArthur took 15 days to realize that there were 200,000 Chinese fighting behind him in the mountains of northern Korea. And those who don't know how to interpret the way the Chinese conduct things will end up very badly. The West tends to view China as an equal, assuming that the Chinese will have the same reactions, which will not happen at all. China is another world, another universe, another way of dealing with business, life, and the world. And considering that they have been around longer and have made more mistakes, it's better for us to start trying to understand how they think. So, that was our video for today. Leave a comment if you think NVIDIA will recover its stock value. If we say that this is temporary, I don't know if $1 trillion loss for NASA is temporary, but everyone should follow their optimism as it helps them sleep better. I remind you, let's follow the Art of War in English. The link is in the description. The partner channel Neutrality Studies in Portuguese already exists. I remember I was the first, and so far the only Brazilian, to give an interview to Neutrality Studies. It's very important for you to take a look at the interview, okay? And let's also take the courses from the Art of War channel at our course school. We'll be back shortly, always with responsibility and commitment. Faith in Brazil, folks. See you later. Folks, this book here is crucial for understanding the Chinese mindset regarding the confrontation with the United States. Unrestricted Warfare is written by 2 Chinese colonels, one of whom later officially reached the rank of general officer in the Chinese Air Force, and they describe the entire Chinese strategy to counter the United States. And it is not purely military. I think after the Gulf War in 1991, the Chinese woke up to the military and technological superiority of the United States and developed new approaches for a possible confrontation. This book is available on Amazon, and every time you buy books and other items on Amazon, you are helping the ARTE Da Guerra channel. Amazon accepts credit cards, offers installment plans, accepts bank slips, and has various payment methods, and the delivery is quite fast.
E a entrega é bastante rápida.